So yeah, starting the Indeed Policy Forum. Good afternoon and welcome all to the first and day one of the Indeed Policy Forum on advancing evidence-based policy, practice and evaluation in the PCV and deradicalization fields, the role of policy and policymakers. Quite a long title, but it also emphasizes how critical and the broad outreach of our project and the interventions that we're going to have today. My name is Pedro Librado. I'm the moderator of today's session. I'm also the Chief Research Officer and the head of the Radicalization Violent Extremism portfolio at IPS Innovative Prison Systems, and Indeed consortium partner, and I'm an Indeed team member. And together with my Indeed colleagues, we are very excited to have you all with us today, different professionals from different fields, practitioners, policymakers, researchers from EU and beyond, joining together with us for a couple of hours in an event that has a threefold focus, recognizing the importance of and the role of policymakers and policy play in implementing and advancing evidence-based policy, practice, and evaluation, presenting the tools and products that we've been developing for the previous years and how they can be used to advance evidence-based evaluation, policy, and practice, and also to support the good practice utilization that sometimes is quite forgotten, and to foster the recognition and consensus amongst key stakeholders at three levels: local, national, and at the EU, on the role of policy and within policymakers, and on the tools used in the field. So with this in mind, we have prepared a great agenda, as I believe you can see in the screen today, with key experts and speakers that will touch upon the features that I just mentioned. We'll be shortly starting with the two keynote speeches by Tarja Makinen and Marjana Kordaczuk-Vas. Apologies for not being that proficient in Finnish and Polish in beforehand. But both Tarja and Marjana will intend by addressing how critical evaluation is and how Indeed has filled in some of the gaps and challenges faced by policy and practice, and how it interplays with the goals and strategy of the recently launched EU Knowledge Hub on the prevention of radicalization, and setting the tone for forthcoming panel that will have as the core 1 hour and a half of today, the hands-on session on the Indeed Toolkit. I kindly highlight that there will not be a specific dedicated Q&A panel after the keynote speeches, but feel free to pose any questions within the chat or also at the end of the hands-on session, as we'll be having a live, so to say, possibility for interaction within the different members that are here today. Okay, so with that in mind, I welcome you all once again, and I'll give the floor to Ms. Tarja Makinen. And just saying a few words about Tarja. Tarja has been working for the Ministry of Interior in Finland since December 1996 in various strategic positions. So Tarja has an extensive experience in preventing violent radicalization and extremism. It was under her initiative and leadership that Finland developed a comprehensive framework for preventing violent radicalization, which included the evaluation of the National Action Plan in PCV in 2019 by an external evaluator. The UN commended the inclusion of local government authorities, civil societies, and communities in the drafting of the action plan in their 2019 evaluation of Finland. These actors were involved in the implementation of this national action plan, and following Tarja's initiative, the 2016 National Action Plan was evaluated by an external evaluator. She has been actively involved in international collaboration for over 20 years, and since September 2021, she has been working for the EU Commission within DG Home in the unit of prevention of radicalization. Her main task was to create the EU Knowledge Hub on the prevention of radicalization, which was launched very recently this month in Brussels, in an event that took place a few weeks ago. Tarja, thank you for being with us. I kindly ask you to keep within the time of the 10-minute time frame, and the floor or the screen is yours. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. And first, on the behalf of the Commission, I would like to thank the Indeed project for the excellent work you have done. The outcome of the project offers a pathway to advance evaluation activities, and the Indeed project will provide practical support for the policymakers in their evaluations. I have 3 points in my short speech. First is why evaluation is important for the policymakers. And the second point is about the knowledge hub, because we have to use all opportunity to promote and disseminate information on the knowledge hub. And the third point is how the knowledge hub could support the dissemination and implementation of outcomes of the INDEED project through different key mechanisms. So first, evaluation is crucial for policymakers, as it helps them to understand the effectiveness of preventive policy and interventions. It assists in formulating evidence-based policies and strategies, allocating resources, and ensuring accountability. Additionally, evaluation provides insights into the important question what works and what doesn't work, guiding future policy development and implementation. And evaluation is also one of the cross-cutting priorities in the strategic orientations, EU-level priorities on PCVE for 2024-25. According to the strategic orientations, the evaluation of actions and interventions is essential for improving public policies. The evaluation method should be transparent and integral part of exchanges in this area to enable all stakeholders to improve the effectiveness of available tools, methods, and approaches for practitioners and policymakers, as well as to promote the development of new ones. Policymakers are tasked with drafting guidelines for prevention of radicalization at the national level, in line with the guidance provided by the ministers. The evaluation of practices and measures supports the work of policymakers by providing solid and evidence-based foundation for policies and strategies. While success can be hard to measure, it is easy to understand. By conducting evaluations, we gain better understanding of the elements that contribute to success. And it is also, this understanding is essential for strategic communication, which is another cross-cutting priority for 2024-2025. Through the information evaluations we can more effectively demonstrate the impact of various measures and interventions, as well as how they have affected the different areas. Now, a few words on the Knowledge Hub. As it was already said, the Commission launched the EU Knowledge Hub on prevention of radicalization on June 17 in a high-level conference in Brussels. Many of the participants present today in this conference attended the event. The Knowledge Hub and the Unit for Prevention of Radicalization, which is the main actor in the Commission's efforts to prevent radicalization, will act as the EU-level contact point for this issue. Now there is a phone number and email address that you can always contact if you have questions about EU collaboration in prevention of violent radicalization. As Commissioner Johansson stated in her opening speech at the conference, the Knowledge Hub on prevention of radicalization marks a new chapter in our shared work on preventing radicalization. The Knowledge Hub is built on the successes of the Radicalization Awareness Network, RAN, which was established in 2011, and it will serve as a platform to support policymakers, practitioners, and researchers in collaboratively preventing radicalization and addressing security and societal challenges posed by extremism. Now I will give some examples of the activities offered by the Knowledge Hub. Here, and you can see them on this slide also. First, the thematic panels. They are a new format of collaboration that brings together policymakers and practitioners, supported by researchers, to focus and consolidate knowledge on specific topics outlined in the strategic orientations. The thematic panels are set for 2 years, maximum 2 years period, and they have 4 meetings per year. During the preparations for the Knowledge Hub project-based collaborations, so-called PBCs, were activities praised by the policymakers. These member state-led initiatives on pre-finite topics will continue within the Knowledge Hub. Policy and practice joint events will enhance knowledge to align practices with effective prevention policies. And ad hoc workshops and events will address emerging challenges. In addition to the activities included in the annual work plan, the opportunity to organize ad hoc workshops and events enhances flexibility, allowing for swift responses to the rapidly changing extremist environment. Study visits will support the implementation of policies and practices by providing opportunities for peer-to-peer support and learning from best practices in member states and priority third countries. Tailor-made support services will provide customized assistance for specific needs for member states and all the stakeholders in the field of prevention of radicalization. The annual drafted training program will offer training on various topics, catering to both newcomers and more experienced experts in PCVE, covering general approaches as well as specific topics. The Knowledge Hub will also offer mentoring program for young experts in PCVE and job shadowing opportunities for more experienced experts. One of the novelties of the Knowledge Hub lies in its foresight services. The objective of these services is to provide insights into future extremist threats, supporting member states in developing informed policies and strategies. Collaboration with researchers is a crucial part of the Knowledge Hub. It will offer policymakers and practitioners the opportunity to collaborate with researchers and benefit from their insights and inputs. The Knowledge Hub will also serve as an aggregator of relevant research inputs from projects on PCV funded by the EU, such as those under Horizon Europe. The goal is to ensure that the outcomes and tools developed in projects like INDEED are widely disseminated, facilitating the effective utilization. The Knowledge Hub will provide in-depth studies to address gaps and complement existing research. Main stakeholders, next slide please. Here you can see the main stakeholders and partners of the Knowledge Hub. They are key actors in EU member states, priority third countries, and within the Commission and other EU institutions and agencies. The guiding principles of the Knowledge Hub include the whole of society approach, multi-sectoral collaboration, and bottom-up approach. Additionally, it includes online radicalization, prevention, research, and foresights. Now I will move on to the last point in my speech, and that is how the Knowledge Hub could support the dissemination and implementation of the outcomes of the INDEED project through several key mechanisms. INDEED project is here as an example, but of course we would like to have the same kind of activities in all EU-funded research projects. The Knowledge Hub will support member states in implementing the outcomes of the INDEED project in a systematic way. This can be done, for example, in the following ways. The thematic panels, which I already mentioned, can effectively utilize the results of existing evaluations to consolidate knowledge and provide recommendations on how evaluations can further enhance the implementation of priorities. Looking ahead, if aligned with the needs of member states, a project-based collaboration focused on evaluation could be initiated. This platform would facilitate the sharing of experiences regarding the evaluation of actions and interventions, as well as highlight good practices that could inform the development of policies and strategies. As outlined in the Knowledge Hub annual work plan, which is currently in process to be validated, for 2024-2025, we propose to organize an ad hoc workshop dedicated to presenting the outcomes of the INDEED project. This would include feedback from policymakers and practitioners. Such an initiative aims to foster collaboration and interaction among policymakers, practitioners, and researchers within the PCV field in evaluation. A study visit could be arranged to a member state that has conducted an evaluation utilizing the outcomes of the INDEED project. This visit could allow stakeholders to observe firsthand how these outcomes have been integrated into local practices and policies related to preventing radicalization. Additionally, tailor-made support service could be offered specifically in the area of evaluation. This would involve providing customized assistance to member states or organizations seeking to implement or improve the evaluation frameworks, drawing on lessons learned from successful applications of INDEED projects outcomes. It might be good to mention that the tailor-made support service is a confidential process, ensuring open discussion between the requesting member states and the expert group. So this brings me to the end of my speech, and I would like to finish this by saying that these were just a few examples of the opportunities that the Knowledge Hub could provide for disseminating research and knowledge-based projects where they are needed. And the INDEED project could serve as a pilot project, as a good practice, demonstrating how to translate knowledge, practices, and tools into concrete actions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Mäkinen, for your presentation. Definitely a must to include policymakers within evaluation procedures as early as possible, and to understand the results of evaluation, what works, what does not, as you mentioned, what can we do differently towards more effective EU member states policies and strategies, and countering the gap that we often observe between policymakers, research, and practitioners, which are working everyone within the same field of PCV. Definitely sounds like the way to go towards an increased holistic approach to the prevention of radicalization. So congratulations on the EU Knowledge Hub launch, and great to see that that important steps are underway under DG Home's leadership. Thank you very much once again, Tarja. And with that, I invite the second keynote speaker to the screen, our INDEED coordinator and colleague Marzena Kordajuk-Vas. INDEED was mentioned by Tarja a lot as a pilot project. INDEED was also mentioned within the strategic orientations for prevention of radicalization 2024-2025. So it will be interesting to know a bit more about the project. A few words about Marzena. She's a researcher, trainer, and author of prevention programs, and an expert within the Polish Platform for Homeland Security on the field of radicalization prevention, where she coordinates this INDEED project. For 18 years, Marzena served in the Polish police, coordinating matters related to police social prevention. Currently working at CIPOL, the European Union Agency for Law Enforcement Training. She has actually collaborated within the Radicalization Awareness Network for many years, especially recently as the Run Pol working group leader. Marzena, needless to say, it's always a pleasure to hear the brains behind the INDEED project approach. So thank you for being once again with us. I will not be a good moderator if I'll not say to try to keep within the 10-minute time for your speech. The screen is all yours. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Pedro, for this nice introduction of me as a INDEED coordinator. It sounds good, you know, the INDEED coordinator. So yeah, but I'm joking a bit, but yes, I have a pleasure to be the coordinator of INDEED. But before I will say a few more words about our project. So thank you, Tarja, for this introduction and explaining us the role of evaluation and evidence-based evaluation, because this is the core core part of the Indeed project that we are working on. And also thank you for informing us about the EU Knowledge Hub. We are more than happy that this work done by Radicalization Awareness Network will be continued, and even we will go deeper into the research and the bringing closer policymakers and practitioners, which is very important. And we are more than happy that you think about that. You see actually the Indeed project as this project that can be used as an example, and that we can count on the utilization of our results. Because actually in Indeed, this is what we aimed since early beginning. We wanted to respond to the challenges that we identified when we started to prepare our proposal, but we wanted to deliver the results, the practical results for practitioners and also policymakers to support them in the daily work. So Indeed, so this is why we are happy that it will be possible also to do it also via EU Knowledge Hub. So I mentioned about the challenges identified by us. Yes, so our project, Indeed project, its aim is to use the evidence-based approaches to strengthen first-line practitioners and also policymakers' knowledge and capabilities and also skills for a few processes. So we identify when we started to work on the proposal from own experiences, from practice, we knew that there are the challenges related to the process of designing and also challenges related to the process of planning, implementing and evaluating of PVE, CVE, and also de-radicalization initiatives. So this is why we wanted also help ourselves because our consortium is very extensive. We have 19 partners from 15 countries, many practitioners and also policymakers dealing in the field of PVE, CVE, and radicalization. So we were thinking about how we could support those two target audiences, already mentioned by me a few times, practitioners and policymakers in their work, and to prepare them better for designing, for planning, and evaluating the evidence-based initiatives in the field of PVE, CVE, and the radicalization. So I already mentioned a few times and underlined that among our audience, we have practitioners, but also policymakers. And today we are meeting to show to our colleagues responsible for the decision-making process that we thought of them since early beginnings, since starting at the moment, thinking about the project, preparing the proposal, implementing the proposal, and having the results that will support also them in their work. It means support with the designing and planning and implementing and evaluating initiatives in the field. So therefore, in our project, working on defining the approach and defining the evidence-based policy and practice in our project, and also working on the definition of the evidence-based evaluation, we were thinking and we consolidated, let's say, three main aspects. So we underlined that evidence-based policy and practice, the same for evidence-based evaluation, that they are the process, the actions, the initiatives that they have to bring three main components. On the one hand, we are talking about the external evidence deriving from the research, and combining it with the professional expertise. It means that the expertise and the knowledge and the skills deriving from the field of practice and the decision making, and being also focused on the values, on the preferences, and the circumstances which are specific for the stakeholders. Stakeholders are taking part in the preparing the initiatives and also being engaged in the implementation of initiatives and also in the process of evaluation. And among those stakeholders, as I already mentioned, we have also policymakers. And indeed, when we started to think about the types of initiatives, so we formulated like the 4 main types of initiatives we were focused on within the implementation of our project. So we were focused on the long-term comprehensive preventive programs, on the short-term actions, on the ad hoc interventions, but we also underline that among those initiatives which are implemented in the field of PVECV and radicalization, we have also policies and strategies. And they were so important for us because since early beginning, we saw that how important policies and the strategies are for the building the ground in the local environments for the further activities in the field. So we knew that without evidence-based policies and strategies, and this evidence-based work done by policymakers, we as the practitioners cannot be fully efficient. This is why the policymakers are the main target audience of our project, together with practitioners and also researchers and the people involved in the work related to the research, which is really important for our project. So in this way, we having the policymakers among our target audience is natural that since early beginning we were in touch with the policymakers, and we were aware and we were really trying to keep and to underline all the time the importance of the dialogue between the practitioners and policymakers, but also having the input from policymakers to our work, to our results, and also respond the needs, identify the needs of policymakers, which we identify during our project. Because the very important part of the indeed work was as the first stage to do research, to identify the solutions, approaches to evidence-based evaluation, and also designing process of the initiatives, if PVECV in the radicalization, and then going even deeper, asking practitioners, but also policymakers about their needs and their challenges they face during the everyday work, to be able to respond, to create the results, our tools that really will respond to those needs and help practitioners and policymakers to create, to design and to evaluate in the evidence-based way initiatives, including policies and strategies. So just in the end, just to summarize once more, and actually when in the one line that evidence-based evaluation is important, what was already explained by Tarja, it's important because it gives us the opportunity to stop for the moment, to see what works, what doesn't work, and why things doesn't work in the field of practice and also policy making. And then thanks to this, we can be more efficient and we can avoid the problems in the future, and we definitely can increase the efficiency of our work in the world of practice and policy making. The last sentence that it's I'm saying about the policy and about the practice and the policy making, but in the project, this is like a comprehensive one approach. So we are the part of the entire approach. It means that together we are working, that there is the bridge built between the practice based on the efficient policy and supported by evidence-based research. So thank you from my side. I wish you interesting meeting, and I'm convinced actually that you will be really interested what we have to offer you, what kind of practical tools, and they will be presented by my colleagues from Indeed Consortium. So thank you, Pedro. Once more, thank you, Tarja, for this valuable introduction, and I'm passing the floor back to Pedro. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Marjana, for your thorough and comprehensive presentation of the Indeed and keeping within the time, of course. But yeah, a great overview of the Indeed and the challenges the project intended to address and how. I will purposely not comment too much on it, otherwise I will be spoiling the next panel and the products that my colleagues will be presenting. But despite the fact that I might be biased because I worked on Indeed and I know its products and its relevance, I also worked on in many other internal security fund, Horizon, and Justice project. And that valuation always comes into place as the elephant in the room, so to say. Actually, not that long ago, in a research that I participated in an ISF project, it showed that across more than 14 de-radicalization or disengagement programs in Europe, only one had concrete evaluation procedure established since the beginning. Just wanted to share this info as to emphasize how critical evaluation is and how broad is the Indeed perspective and the different actors it intended to merge across, from prison to law enforcement to policymakers to NGOs. Once again, thank you very much, Marjana and Tarja for your to-the-point interventions to kickstart this policy forum. And it's time to move on to the panel hands-on session on the Indeed Toolkit, which will be moderated by my Indeed colleague and friend, Robert Orell. Before passing you the floor, Robert has more than 2 decades of experience in PCVE field, working with rehabilitation and reintegration of violent extremists. For more than 15 years, he provided interventions with clients in exit work. And for 10 years, he worked as the director and manager of exit programs within Exit Sweden and Exit USA. He is the director of Transform, the partner in the Indeed project, a Swedish NGO active in several EU projects and initiatives on the field of PCVE. Since 2011, he has been a member of the steering committee of the European Commission's Radicalization Awareness Network that now moved to the EU Knowledge Hub on Prevention of Radicalization, co-chairing the working group on rehabilitation. Robert, thank you very much for being with us, and passing the screen up to you.
Thank you for that, Pedro, and thank you for the setting the scene presentations. We're now moving in, as Pedro introduced. We're moving into the hands-on session, and here we will have a number of speakers presenting the Indeed Toolkit. So what is it that the project has developed in terms of practical resources and tools for policymakers? In this panel, we'll hear 5 speakers present different perspectives. We'll start with the evaluation package presented by Irina van der Vet. We will hear about the repository of risk and protective factors presented by Marjana. And we will hear the training package and learning products presented by Kai-Brian Jacobson from Patrir. And then we will end up with a few practitioner perspectives from myself and my colleague Vasilios, but more to that later. I think with no further ado, let me introduce the first speaker of this panel, which is Irina van der Vet. Irina is a research coordinator at the University of Helsinki at the Center of European Studies. She's also acts as the European Research Community on Radicalization, the ERCOR researcher. For more than 8 years, she's been working in the field of security, counterterrorism, and prevention of violent extremism with a large number of European stakeholders. As part of the Indeed project, Irina contributed to the development of the evidence-based approach to evaluation in PCV. Primarily together with the University of Helsinki colleagues, she led the production of the Indeed evaluation package, including the module, the e-guidebooks, and the web-based tools. Questions that we will that we will look at is what are the key elements of the evaluation package developed by Indeed? How concretely could these products contribute to evidence-based PCV policies? Or what are the competitive advantages of evaluation package? So Irina, with no further ado, I leave the screen over to you.
Thank you so much, Robert, for the great introduction. And well, I'm here alone today. I will deliver my presentation alone, but I also would like to present Lena Malki, who greatly and tremendously contributed to this evaluation package. And she's here today, and she will be able to answer your questions at the very end of the presentation. So in my presentation, I will present the evaluation package, and I tried to tailor this presentation to policymakers' perspective, because as I think Marjana already mentioned, we developed a series of products for different types of stakeholders. And there are a few questions that I think would be very important to touch upon. For example, why evidence-based evaluation matters for PCV policymakers. And here I will try to build the bridge, which already Tarja started building between the evidence-based evaluation and evidence-based policy. Then the next question would be, what role do policymakers play in evaluation? And then I will focus on competitive advantage, or how can indeed evaluation package be used by policymakers. Next slide. Yes, thank you very much. Yes, so as it was already mentioned, evidence-based evaluation greatly contributes to evidence-based policy and practice. But when we're talking about policy level, it's also important to understand that we are talking about different levels and different mandates of policymakers. So not all the policymakers are directly involved in evaluations. Some are only utilizing the results of evaluation. But anyway, all of this is also very important to develop the field further. And evidence-based evaluation greatly contributes to more knowledge and awareness on what works in the field and what doesn't. And this is also what Tarja already mentioned. And also it can provide the overview of the current trends in the field. Then it can also facilitate more evidence-informed decisions, and also at different levels. The evidence is very important, especially the evidence which is coming from good quality evaluations. And it's also important to mention that not only academic researchers are providers of this evidence. There are also different data collection agencies or agencies who have these research elements, like the Eurostat or the OECD, who also have quite a rich data collection, or national registries. So besides the research evidence as such, the academic evidence. Then evidence-based evaluation greatly contributes to communication with stakeholders. And with this kind of communication, it is relatively easy to contribute to the combination of bottom-up and bottom-down and top-down approaches to policy making. And it also can contribute greatly to more rigorous analysis in the field, going slightly beyond the impact assessment, because we know that at the policy level, we can quite often hear about impact assessment, but the evaluation also offers the opportunity to look at the process of implementation of different initiatives and different strategies and action plans. And just to see what kind of challenges practitioners are experiencing on the ground, and how can policy measures can contribute to the mitigation of these challenges. And of course, the shared knowledge. So the evidence-based evaluation stimulates the sharing of knowledge on the results of the evaluation. Here, I just also wanted to very briefly present our upcoming book, edited by Teresa Silva and Marjena, the coordinator of our project. And the book is on preventing and countering violent extremism and radicalization, evidence-based policy in practice. And Lena Malki and myself wrote an article there, which I can highly recommend reading to you. And their article is on the research of academic researchers and in principle research and evidence for PCV policy and practice. So this is just something to look forward to. Okay, now get back to the results of the INDEED project, to the results of the INDEED evaluation package. As it was already mentioned, the evaluation package has 3 elements, or 3, I would say, products, main products. This is an evidence-based evaluation model, which we prepared to create the foundation for the tool. Then we also wrote 2 e-guidebooks on evidence-based evaluation, and we also developed a web-based tool, INDEED tool, that's the way we call it, for planning evidence-based evaluations. Next slide, please. Yeah, great. Yes, so all these 3 products could be found on the INDEED Toolkit webpage. And there you just need to go under evaluation package and you will see evaluation model, evaluation tool, and e-guides. So that's the way to reach and to look at this at these outcomes. Now a few words about the model. Well, the model actually was planned as a rather theoretical construct to put all our ideas on evidence-based evaluation into this into the graphics and explain our ideas and our approaches better. But still, it can serve as very maybe useful approach also for policymakers or all those stakeholders, irrespective of their previous experience in evidence-based evaluation. So the model consists of two elements, basically. It includes the principles of evidence-based evaluation and the stages of evaluation process. And it's very important to say, and this is something what Marjena already covered, that we developed a human-centered and stakeholder-centered approach to evidence-based evaluation. And we argue that that stakeholders' preferences, circumstances, and values should be considered at all stages and all steps of the evaluation process. And we define 4 stages of the evaluation process. This is preparation, design, execution, and utilization. But within these stages, there are also well-defined steps. Next slide. Yes, so you can introduce yourself to the model by getting to our website. And there we produced a clickable version of this model. So as I already mentioned, this is like a snapshot on how evaluation process could look like. It can provide a very quick overview on how to cooperate with different stakeholders, how to cooperate with policymakers, what kind of resources are needed for evaluation, how to adhere GDPR and other ethical considerations during the planning stage and implementation stage of the initiative. So everything is included very briefly and very targetedly here. And then there is another product, or basically two products, the INDEED e-guidebook 1 and INDEED e-guidebook 2. And they are all available in 10 languages. And let me just very briefly introduce both of them. Yes, so INDEED e-guidebook 2 is an evidence-based evaluation of PVE, CVE, and de-radicalization initiatives. and what might be useful for policymakers, but also for other types of other groups of stakeholders, is the examples of previous evaluations. We know that it's not always easy to find those examples. It was a team effort from our side to do that. So please have a look at inside our e-guidebooks and find out more. Then this e-guidebook was also rather an introductory level e-guide, and there we also explain what is evidence-based evaluation, why evaluation is needed, what are the main types of evaluation, also how to organize a human rights based evaluation, and we also provided a few tips for successful evidence-based evaluation. E-guidebook 2 is covering evidence-based practice, and there we also specified what is evidence-based practice. We also focused on the quality standards for evaluation. We know that there are different types of evaluation, opinion-based evaluations, and therefore we wanted also to introduce this element in our output. And now I would like to introduce also our key element in this evaluation package. This is the Indeed tool. It was already introduced by Lena at different events, and we also had a recorded webinar, so you can find more information. But I will also do it today. So what can you find in the tool? So within the tool, you can find information on evaluation by the stage of the initiative implementation. So there we provide information on evaluation and initiative planning. So there we argue that the evaluation should be already integrated at the level of the planning and design of a particular program, project, and initiative. Then there is also information on evaluation during the implementation of the initiative, and basically we're also covering the options on what could be done at the end of the implementation of the initiative. Then, what is also very important, we are introducing a step-by-step. We are introducing step-by-step instructions for most common types of evaluation, and in the Indeed project we dealt with 4 types. Basically, we covered the main 3: formative, process, and outcome, and we felt the need to cover the case-based evaluation, which was highly demanded, I would say, by our practitioners who are involved in interventions in all kinds of ad hoc actions, and needed this kind of very brisk and quick methodology to try to understand why certain issues didn't work or why something worked out. So we introduced that as well. And also the last element over there is the useful templates, checklists, reports, and further resources. Yes, so that is how our tool looks like. And at the end of my presentation, I will provide a QR code so you can scan it and basically you can surf and navigate through the tool. So we defined 4 modules and with formative, process, outcome, evaluation, plus the evaluation of single cases. But before choosing the module, it is very good to check this blue text box. There we prepared some information on what is good to know about evaluation in PCV and de-radicalization field. So we tried to tailor this tool to this specific field and find those nuances that could help PCV practitioners to navigate through the planning and implementation of their programs. And now let's take a quick look at just, for example, module 2. Yeah, so basically each module it's pretty standard. We have a short introduction text and also the video introduction. And at the bottom, you can also find 3 tabs. So these 3 tabs are also very important because there are the buttons which you could click. What are my options? Then there is more information on a particular type of evaluation that we're talking about. And in module 2, we're talking about process evaluation. And also we provided the resource bank with additional sources that can support practitioners with evaluation. And this is the magical part of the tool, which we all like very much. So this is the step-by-step instructions for different types of evaluation, for process evaluation, formative evaluation, and for the outcome evaluation. And you just need to click the start button. And the next slide, please. Yes, and then you will be brought to the workbook view. So, and there you can click on the highlighted text for more detailed instructions on what should be done under a particular stage. And also the next slide, please. Yes, and also after you click at these steps, at the bottom, you can also follow up on the progress. So basically, you can see how far you are in the planning of the evaluation process, which is also, I think, very useful when you're using the tool online. After you finalize the usage of the tool, there is an option to choose between 2 types of reports. There is a shorter version of the report where you can also provide your own notes, because both of the reports are available in Word format. So basically you can just download them and use them offline. And there is also a longer detailed version of the report, which describes all the details of the evaluation, of your evaluation process. Yes, also a very, very important element of the tool is the, okay, is this, so we basically have different templates and different checklists. We have an ethical, the checklist for ethics, which is also very important. The quality checklist, just to check how to raise the quality of your evaluation outputs. And also the evaluation action plan. And just for your information, we used all these 3 forms, all these 3, and the checklist as well, all these 3 outputs, when we supported our practitioners with our advice on their evaluation, on the evaluation of their specific problems. And the next slide, please. Yes, so yes, so this is the QR code. You can scan it and you check our tool there, and soon it will be available in 10 languages, and we hope that you will really find it useful. And very, very briefly on the competitive advantage, because I promised to do that, and of the Indeed evaluation package. So first of all, and I think that it's very, very important, is that we co-designed and co-tested and co-validated the whole evaluation package together with European PCV and deradicalization stakeholders. And these are consortium partners. These were RAN practitioners, these were academics and other. Really, really a lot of work was done on that front. Then, as I mentioned, everything is available or will be available in 10 languages. In easy-to-read language, we also tested that. We hope that it is interactive, digital, and sustainable. At least that is what that's our target. And also, as I already mentioned, the whole evaluation package suits for policymakers and other stakeholders with or without previous knowledge or experience in evaluation. I hear that somebody's mic is not muted. And just a few more points. We have a strong emphasis on ethics. Also, I think an added value of this particular package and of the whole actually Indeed outputs, strong theoretical foundation, And just by doing this work, I think we already contributed to the creation of the evaluation community and to the promotion of the evaluation culture. Well, that's all from my side. And thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much for that, Irina, for that presentation. I would just want to, before we continue, encourage participants who are not speaking to unmute their microphones to ensure that we have a good sound in the room. So please mute your microphones, don't unmute them. And moving on to the next presentation, we're hearing again from Marzena. And Marzena will talk about the repository of risk and protective factors. Some of the topics we could think of here is what features should policymakers be aware of and why? And how does the repository of risk and protective factors respond to a need identified by the Indeed project? So Marzena, the screen is yours.
Thank you very much, Robert. So good afternoon once more from my side. Actually, I will be very brief, but I have a pleasure in order to present this repository of risk and protective factors, actually the studies on risk and protective factors, which is integral part of our toolkit. On behalf of our colleague Stefan Klose, who was responsible for the coordination of the entire task leading to creation of this digital repository in our toolkit. So as I already mentioned, this repository is the integral part of our toolkit. And this is actually the database of more than 250 studies. Very important is that this repository is updated every 6 months. It means that we are taking care indeed to really to integrate into the repository the results from the latest studies on the risk and the protective factors. So we were talking today, and I hope that it was already very visible that indeed we are focused on the evidence-based approach to the designing of the initiatives in the field of PV-ECV and the radicalization, and also to evaluation, what was underlined also by Irina and explained. So this repository is a kind of yes, the database with the evidence actually deriving from the studies. In this case, we have the materials, the studies in our repository, as it was mentioned, related to risk and protective factors. So for now, we still have a beta version, and however, it's already available on the under the address visible on the slide. I think that also colleagues, they will share via chat box the direct link to the repository, and the final version we will have available in September. If we could move to the next slide, please. Yes. So this repository of studies on risk and protective factors is a compilation, as I mentioned, the results of the studies that bring to us, to Indeed consortium, the evidence on the mentioned factors. So thanks to this repository, you are able to go quickly. To review quickly the scientific literature on risk and protective factors, but not only like a composition of just the studies, the put into one place, but there is the option of filtering, using the filters that will help you to search for the risk or protective factors that are interesting for you. It means that you can use the filters like a study population, which is divided into the subcategories. For example, the risk or protective factors related to the young people, to the young adults, to the adolescents, to the adult people. So then we have filters that you can use them to find this population which is in your interest, and then to search the studies describing the risk and the protective factors directly related to this population. Then we have also the filter related to ideological strain. It means that you can find the studies not only related to the one type of radicalization, but actually divided into the categories deriving from the latest studies. Risk factors are also divided into the categories. So you can see already on the slide the examples of the few factors with which you can select, you can filter the studies saved in our repository. So you can filter the risk and protective factors via factors related to the individual factors related to the identity, for example, of individual, but also socioeconomic factors, religious factors, and many other type of factors that will help you to find a material which is in your interest. So then the studies saved in the repositories, they are also possible to be filtered from the perspective of the study location. So it means that you can find that there is the division into the countries from which the authors and the articles are coming from, and then you can find the risk and the protective factors from the perspective of specificity of the selected country. And there is an additional filter, observe the outcomes, so you can see the studies which feel, and choosing the mentioned categories, you can find the studies, the latest studies on the risk and the protection factors, protective factors selected, and then they can be displayed on the screen. Could we go, maybe move? Yeah, yes. So yes, for what reason you can use? Yeah, there is the presentation when you will go directly to our toolkit, and you will click on the digital repository of risk and protective factors. You will be redirected to the repository. In the beginning of repository, there is a short introduction video with the short instruction how this repository can be used. Already what I said, now you can see on this short video, the explanatory video showing you the filters and showing the studies that I feel that can be filtered, on the basis of the categories you indicated. So it looks like this. Also, there is the information about the publisher and the link also directly to the entire study. Nevertheless, we have also, of course, the abstract, and you can see the summary of the study filtered, and indication of risk factors, and the same logic is behind of the part dedicated to the protective factors. So then you can find the text with the parts which are dedicated to the risk or protective factors. So this repository can be used by you. Yes, we see on the slide the example that you can find the explanation what kind of the links are between the conversion to Islam and the violent extremism. This is only one example, but going through the risk factors, you can see more links between the also other ideologies and for example, individual risk factors typical for the specific population. So, as I mentioned, this explanation that you can, thanks to the studies saved in our repository, you can find the explanation on the links between the conversion to Islam and the violent extremism. But the second very important aim of our repository is also that it can be used as a base for you of risk factors understood as a potential causes of radicalization, and then from the perspective of the studies that were already conducted and the risk factors were, let's say, proved by the evidence that they can be specific for the specific population and for the specific country or for the specific ideological strain. So then they can be used as a ground to the building of the initiatives that should respond those risk factors occurring in the local environment. The same concept with the protective factors that can be used as ideas, as factors that should be strengthened or that can be used during the planning and implementation of the initiatives in the field of PVE, CV, and radicalization as a protective, strengthening factors against radicalization. To whom this repository is addressed to? So the potential users. Among potential users, we see the policymakers, we see the representatives of no government organizations, but actually the wide variety of the entities called as a civil society organizations, frontline practitioners, among others, the law enforcement representatives of education systems, social services, but also prison staff, the probation officers, the main actors dealing with the issue of PVE, CV, and radicalization in the local environments. But also from this repository can benefit the evaluators and also researchers. They can check in this base the latest results from the science on the risk and the protective factors, which can be used as a building ground for the deepening of the research or continuing in the future, and as a starting point for researchers as well. So potential users. So yes. So from our perspective, this repository can strengthen the design of the new PVE CV initiatives, as I mentioned, but also it can be used in the process of updating them, taking into consideration the new results from the new studies related to risk or protective factors. This repository can also support the evaluation of PVCV initiatives, actually, because it brings the understanding of the field of PVCV in the radicalization. Also can facilitate the informed decision making in everyday practice, using again the evidence deriving from the research and bringing into the practice, and mirroring the identified risk and the protective factors in practice. This repository also strengthened the PCV in trainings. This information we got from our partners, from law enforcement, that they used already repository, and the understanding of the ideologies, understanding on the situation related to the most common risk factors and also protective factors as a value for the preventive measures, and they use it during as an examples during the trainings. And finally, this repository can also facilitate the dialogue between the researchers and the practitioners, and as I already mentioned, can be also the starting point for the research, can support the research on the risk and protective factors. I think, yes, that it was the last slide from my side. Thank you very much, Robert.
Thank you very much, Marzena, for this very practical hands-on presentation on this useful indeed resource. With no further ado, we're continuing the program, and at this point we arrive to the session on the Indeed training package and learning products. This will be presented by Kai Brand-Jakobsson from Patria, and Kai's bio is he's the president of the Romanian Peace Institute, Patria, and director of the Department of Peace Operations. He has more than 15 years experience working in evaluation and learning large-scale evaluation processes. In the Indeed project, he's part of the team working on the development of Indeed's training materials, the training support package, and provision of trainings for practitioners and stakeholders in the field. Some of the questions we will address during the session is how can policymakers engage with these products? What target groups do they have, and how do you foresee sustainability of trainings? So Kai, for the coming 20 minutes, the screen is yours to present the Indeed training package and learning products.
Thank you very much, Robert, and thank you and special appreciation to everyone who is joining us today for the Indeed Policy Forum. I will follow on from the presentations that Marzena and Irina have shared with us and dive a bit into our training package and learning products. And as Robert has said, look at how these are relevant for policy and policymakers working to improve evidence-based policy and practice in the field, and the role of policy and policymakers in supporting training and capacity building as a component of strengthening the use of evidence-based evaluation. So we'll be looking together at why training and capacity building on evidence-based evaluation and designing evidence-based initiatives matters for the PCVE policymakers, what role policymakers play in training and capacity building, and how can the Indeed training package and knowledge products be used by policymakers at local, national, European levels, and also internationally where they may be relevant. I'd like to begin with an actual doing an evidence base, which was carried out within the project, which was the research done by Sara Alfonso from IPS, one of the partners in Indeed, effectively creating a baseline, helping us to understand what's the current state of the field when it comes to training and learning needs and standards for evaluation and the design of PVE, CVE, and de-radicalization initiatives. And this was done through a multi-dimensional approach, including consultations with practitioners, policymakers, and experts in the field at national levels through the Indeed Smart Hubs, a survey which was shared, literature review, and also interviews with practitioners, experts, policymakers, and researchers in the field. And Sara, in this wonderful publication, which is made available on the Indeed platform, highlights some of the findings. One of them is a reflection on a poor evaluation quality and rigor. Now, of course, this is not referring to all evaluations. Some of them are excellent in the field, but there is not a consistency in quality. And this was seen as resulting from a lack of capacity and expertise in actually carrying out evaluation in the PCVE field. In engaging with practitioners from a multi-sectoral, multi-stakeholder background, so looking at law enforcement, social workers, educators, non-governmental organizations and community service organizations, as well as local authorities that are working on PVE and CVE, there was assessed from them themselves to be an absence of key skills and competencies or competences working on evidence-based evaluation and evidence-based design. The third was the absence of training materials in the field for evidence-based evaluation and evidence-based policy and practice. And these challenges were seen as coming from, as I mentioned, when it comes to evaluators, often a lack of technical skills, knowledge, and resources. Many evaluators in the field may come from an academic background or from consultancies, but may not actually have been professionally trained as evaluators or have an experience with the breadth of evaluation approaches possible in evidence-based evaluation. When it comes to the absence of skills and competencies at the level of many practitioners in the field, it was identified that trainings at local, national, and European levels in the field of preventing and countering violent extremism and de-radicalization often do not have actual content on evaluation. So it's a topic that is not covered at the national level in most countries or in most standard existing training curricula. But also very few practitioners are actually trained in how to do evidence-based initiative design. When it comes to the absence of training materials, staff colleges and training institutions lack appropriate curricula and training resources specifically for these topics, for evidence-based evaluation and for designing policy and practice with evidence. We're going to come back to this slide again later on and look at what are some of the Indeed solutions or steps we've taken to try and address these challenges in the field. The study went further to identify some main needs and gaps. One is the lack of rigorous knowledge on PVE, CVE, DRAD, and general crime prevention. While practitioners may have in-depth knowledge in their specific area of engagement, it was identified that there was a lack of knowledge sometimes on comprehensive approaches, multi-stakeholder collaboration, and again, evidence-based evaluation and design. Insufficient know-how on how to conduct evaluation. Very often there was a lack of deep understanding on what it is, its benefits, indicators of success, and how to know if we're doing it well. And there was a generally identified need for the development of complementary skills, which were seen as vital if evaluation is going to be effective. For example, critical thinking, problem solving, risk assessment, and multi-agency cooperation. What this highlighted from practitioners is that evaluation methods and approaches need to be fit for the needs of the field. Delivery of results in ways that fit the operational needs of practitioners and policymakers. It was identified that how we formulate and format results today does not support feeding into use by policymakers or practitioners in many contexts. Also, practitioners identified that evaluation, learning, and improvement approaches need to be integrated into their ways of work. So not only having processes where evaluators come from the outside, but building in peer review, self-review, and practices that can be used to improve evaluation and learning built into institutions and ways of work as well. And really the vital importance of strengthening the evidence base to inform evidence-based practice and policy. There's a lot of experience, but there's not validated and tested evidence gathered in such a way to help us really be able to see what works, what doesn't work, how, why, in what context, and be able to draw upon that to better inform policy and practice. This is why the repository that Marjana has just spoken, that our colleague Stefan Kloss really led on developing, is such a significant contribution to these fields. Overall, three main conclusions that were drawn: the underdeveloped state of trainings that cover the design and evaluation of initiatives, that training programs must be tailored to fit the needs and context of practitioners and policymakers, and really critical feedback from practitioners: trainings need to be practical. They should be hands-on, experiential, and facilitate know-how exchange, and also orient to tools and competencies that they can use. So what is the relevance then of this for policy and policymakers? One, the lack or absence of rigorous, good quality training on PCVE specific evidence-based evaluation approaches leads to poor or inconsistent quality and reliability of evaluation results and findings. Again, the point is inconsistency. Some may be very good, but that is not an established standard across the field. Two, current evaluation approaches and methodologies and delivery of results are often not tailored to be effective or meet the needs for use by policymakers and practitioners. And three, the absence of skills, tools, and methodologies for evidence-based design leads to PCV initiatives of possibly poor or limited quality and reduced or poor results and impact. This means that policies and approaches may be less effective or impactful or have unintended negative consequences and effects. It can feed into the failure to effectively learn and utilize learnings to improve policy and initiatives in the field. And it can also contribute to reduced likelihood of effectively addressing root causes, drivers, and the conditions of violent extremism and radicalization. Summarizing these, policies and initiatives may not achieve intended results. It can take longer, and this is really one of the important things to address around myths of evaluation. People sometimes feel that evaluation takes a long time, that's one of the reasons we don't do it. But if we're not doing evaluation, if we're not testing and really learning what policies contribute to results, what practices are more impactful and effective, then we can keep doing the same work over and over again, but it doesn't achieve the results we want. It doesn't address the problems that we're trying to. And the failure to effectively implement evidence-based evaluation and evidence-based design of initiatives and policies means that we can have misuse of resources. We can be spending money in areas that are not contributing to achieve the results we want, results of scale or effective prevention. So actually, the failure to build the capacities needed in the field contributes to making this work more expensive or the possible misuse of funds. So training and capacity building on evidence-based evaluation and designing initiatives, policies, and practices with evidence, when done well and tailored and appropriate for the field, are cost-effective and vital measures to improve the quality, results, and impact of PCVE and de-radicalization policies and initiatives. So returning then to the gaps that were identified, how we attempted to address these through the INDEED project are by the provision of trainings on evidence-based evaluation and the INDEED evidence-based evaluation tool and model presented by Irina earlier, trainings on designing evidence-based initiatives, and the development of multilingual training support packages, and we'll dive more into those. The training support package itself covers 2 topics. One training has been designed on designing, implementing, and utilizing effective evaluations of PCVE de-radicalization initiatives, and really focusing on evidence-based evaluation, and the training is a practical training for how to use the INDEED tool. The second is a training on designing evidence-based initiatives, how to develop policies, practices, and as Marjana presented, long-term programming projects, policies and strategies, and ad hoc initiatives using evidence. There are 4 component parts of these: the development of multilingual training curricula, the development of 2 training support packages, 2 trainers' manuals, and 2 online self-paced courses. And these include the INDEED toolkit and the e-learning suite, which is being developed, and the improving practice field trainings and training of trainers. We've developed curricula for all of these, which are available in 10 languages, which have been taken up by INDEED. This responds to also the baseline studies where we were told that unless materials are in the languages of practitioners and trainers in their own context, they'll have much less reach and value in the field. We're also finalizing work on 2 trainers' manuals so that trainers can take up these materials and use them in their own local, national, or European contexts. All of these materials and development of the trainings and delivery of the trainings was done by a team of trainers from across the INDEED consortium and across Europe. And here you see some of the actual trainings which were implemented. In Bremen and Madrid, we delivered 2 two-day trainings, the first on the designing evidence-based evaluations and the second on designing evidence-based initiatives. In Cluj-Napoca in Romania, we provided a further training of trainers to broaden the number of people that were trained in how to use the INDEED materials. And then now we're seeing a series of cascade trainings taking place across Portugal, Latvia, Bulgaria, Romania, Germany, France, the Netherlands, Belgium, Finland, and elsewhere across Europe to try and bring these materials out to a wider range of practitioners and experts in the field. The relevance of this training support package for policy and policymakers, the INDEED training curricula and training support packages for the on-site in-person trainings can be adapted for use by national staff colleges, training academies, and institutions, both state and non-state, that are training providers. And we've designed the materials to be modular, so the trainings can be provided as complete units, 2-day trainings that are standalone programs, or as modules integrated into existing trainings. For example, in May, in the training of police in Portugal in community policing, they integrated 2 of the modules from the INDEED package on evidence-based evaluation and on the INDEED tool to address that gap identified in the beginning, the absence of actual training on these materials in general trainings. And the third is that the content and materials provided together with all of the resources in the training support packages can be tailored for national and local use. These materials are also being provided for online self-paced courses. And the reason for this is we've recognized that while it is perhaps in some ways ideal to be able to take part in in-person trainings and really get that added value of direct interaction, if we want to reach scale and to be able to raise basic levels of competency, awareness, and understanding, having online self-paced courses, which law enforcement agencies, government ministries, state institutions, civil society actors can have available for their staff helps to make this much wider in its availability and in people's opportunity to access it. So we also have both of these modules being formatted for availability as online self-paced courses. The relevance here is that the self-paced courses can be used by EU, national, and local state and non-state institutions. They're free of charge, and they'll be maintained after the project. Some of the advantages of the Indeed training package, similar to what Irina mentioned in terms of the tool, they've been co-designed together with European PCVE and de-radicalization stakeholders. The needs identification came directly from the field. We've then prototyped and tested the trainings, gotten evaluation and feedback on them, and done improvements in the course of the project. They'll be available in 10 languages, which will help to make it easier for national governments, local authorities, and practitioners in the field to be implementing them in their contexts. They address core gaps that have been identified in training skills and competencies in the field, and they're suitable for policymakers and other stakeholders that may not have previous background on the topics. Also, there's a very strong emphasis woven throughout all aspects of the training on gender, ethics, legal, and societal aspects of the field, helping to uphold these standards and practices. And there's a strong evidence-based foundation drawing on knowledge and tools which can be helpful for the field. I'd like to thank everyone for this opportunity to present here, and hope that this introduces the relevance and the use of training and capacity building, and the important role that policymakers have for supporting this training to be taking place within our local, national, and EU-wide context as a core component of improving the capabilities and competencies we have in the field for doing evidence-based evaluation, and most importantly, for doing evidence-based policy and practice. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that overview of the training packages and learning products, Kai. We move on to the next part of the of this policy forum, which is practitioner perspectives, where we will hear from Vasilios Theophipoulos from Greece, from the Hellenic Police, and from myself. But I thought, let's start with Vasilios to get you started. Vasilios, your bio is that you are an active police officer in the Hellenic Police with operational and strategic experience in the field of counterterrorism and prevention of radicalization leading to violent extremism at national, European, and international level. Vasilius' rank is colon, and he is seconded to National Security Advisor's Office at the Prime Minister. He is the national representative at the Steering Board on Prevention of Radicalization of the European Commission, and he's a previous co-chair of the Round Pole Working Group. He's the head of the research team of the Hellenic Police in the Indeed project. So, Vasilios, the screen is yours.
Hi, Robert. Good afternoon to everybody. It's really a big pleasure for me to participate in an event like this. I mean, to have together policymakers, practitioners, and researchers. So, because this is a real, a practical example how we can create this kind of synergies between different professionals. I mean, dealing with the same challenge. Concerning, my brief intervention, it's also a big pleasure to be the head of the research team of the Hellenic Police in the Indeed project. And I mentioned this because for me, it's a big experience working as a police officer in a EU-funded project as the Indeed project, participating also in these activities as were described by colleagues and by the consortium. And mainly, the reason that I'm really happy to be part of this group is that, and of course, I will, I would like to give you the practitioner's perspective. When we started the project, me personally, but also the whole team of the Hellenic Police, we are not very familiar with the evaluation. And this is something that we've noticed that it's not only, for the Greek police officers, but it's a kind of finding, for many practitioners. So we we can say that there is a lack of understanding of the concept of evaluation. And of course, at the same time, we've noticed that there is a lack of training. It was described very well by Kai before. This lack limits the ability of police officers, practitioners, to understand and apply evaluation techniques in the performance of their daily duties. And sometimes we've noticed also, based on our experience, in participating in this project, that there is a kind of misunderstanding between different terminologies. For instance, sometimes there is a confusion between evaluation and assessment. It's okay. It's not so easy to understand. The differences, but if you really involved in the project and if you can use the material and the products of the project, you can see that it's completely different. It's another thing when we discuss about an assessment or a threat assessment of a case, and when we discuss about evaluation and mainly evidence-based evaluation. At the same time, we've noticed that there are resource constraints. Practitioners frequently face limitations in time, funding, and expertise. And of course, when you face these kind of challenges, this can hinder comprehensive evaluation efforts. Another important thing is that there is a lack of standardization. There is often no standardized approach to evaluation. And of course, this making difficult to compare results across different initiatives and contexts. And the last point, because also we need to find the links and the synergy between practitioners and policy makers. Decision makers sometimes are not aware of the benefits of evaluation and do not consider it necessary. So this requires more effort from practitioners in order to convince them to accept the use of evaluation to an action or initiative. Based again, on our participation in the products, and this is for me the added value for the Indeed project. We had the opportunity during the development of the project, of the deliverables of the project, to participate in many activities. And mainly, I remember we had a workshop here in Athens in cooperation with the University of Helsinki and the Center of Security Studies in order to develop the model, for the evaluation package. And it was extremely interesting for me personally, and also for the colleagues who participated in this process. Because after, at the end of this procedure, we understood really in depth how we can use the model and later the tool in our daily work. And again, it's not an easy task because as a practitioners, we are not very familiar with the definition of evaluation. So we need to find exactly, what are the synergies and what is the added value using these deliverables. And mainly based also on the presentations by colleagues. For instance, as a practitioner, when you have time to visit our website, you will see that in the evaluation tool, there is a specific module for ad hoc action. That means that this is really very important, for practitioners to use this module for. It's mainly focused on ad hoc action, so you can use it in order to evaluate your action. And for me, the added value also is that it's not only, to evaluate your action, your ad hoc action, but for me, the benefit of all this participation is to learn how to design an initiative based on evidence. That means that it's not only, to evaluate an existing initiative or an action, but also for me, the most important, the most crucial as a practitioner is to learn and to understand and to how I will develop something, but having in mind that also we need to find additional elements and data in order to evaluate this action. And this is really a very interesting procedure. I mean, because it's very clear when you click on the module 4 to see, for instance, how you have to follow specific steps in order to complete the circle in order to have, I mean, an evaluation for an ad hoc action. And also, I'm happy because we participate also in another package with the Hellenic Police. We will have the opportunity to check the tool using a real case in order not exactly to evaluate the case, but to see how we should design our actions before implementing, this action. Also, for us as practitioners, we find extremely interesting the repository, which was presented by Marcena. It's also a very good example, a good practice, because it fills a critical gap between researchers and practitioners. So it fills a critical gap by providing practitioners with access to empirical studies that explore the risk and protective factors associated with radicalization processes. And also, it brings together scientific studies on the same phenomenon carried out in different countries, so we can understand how it works. I mean, the same how colleagues from different places face the same challenges. So the guidebooks as well, very practical, and I think it's important to use. And the last point, and I will give the floor back to Robert. It's also important for the INDEED project that many, of the material which is available to the practitioners is also available in Greek. And I said that because it's really important for the practitioners, from practitioners' perspective, to see that material is also available in our language. And sometimes it's more practical and more easy for practitioners to learn something in their languages than to have available in other languages. Yeah, this is for my part, and I'm here if there is any question at the end. Back to you, Robert.
Thank you very much, Vasilios, for that point, for those valuable insights. So from my experience, I wanted to share a few different perspectives. First of all, I worked for a long time in the PCVE field in Sweden, with the RAN in Europe, in North America, in Asia, in Oceania. And I see that it's only over the last few years that there's been a stronger focus on evidence-based evaluation in this type of field. I would say nowadays it's probably unlikely that any government or funding body would fund PCVE initiatives without any type of evaluation component. But I also recognize that this has not always been the case. So for this reason, from a practitioner perspective, I really encourage to include evaluation perspectives. It's important to help the practitioner organizations to understand why this is important and clear. As a practitioners, and I know this myself from working on the ground for many years, when you're up over your ear in the day-to-day work, a lot of challenging, high pressure situations, it might be overwhelming to think of taking a step back and thinking of how to evaluate and who should do this and where should the funding come from and how will that impact and affect the work. But to help then the organizations that you fund, the initiatives that you fund, to implement this hopefully already from the start, the planning of the initiative, or as soon as possible. From my end, when I worked at Access Sweden many years ago, we had the funding ministry initiate the evaluation of Exit Sweden back in 2009, 2010. And that experience meant a lot. To have somebody look at the work we did to also help us understand what worked really well, what should we strengthen more, and where do we need to advance and build up more capacity. And one of the aspects or experience there was to think of how to bridge the researchers and practitioners. How can these two different fields come closer by getting to know one another and to share experience, share perspectives, and to understand what it means to do an evaluation. And referring then to the Indeed as a partner organization representing Transform, I'm very proud of this initiative, very happy. This is a very well needed initiative in the field in many ways. As I said earlier, there has been a lot of initiatives that was not evaluated properly, and I think it's a big loss to miss all those opportunities of learning. What were the lessons learned? What could have been improved? And to share that with others who engage in this field of exit work and helping people to leave violent extremism. So the Indeed definitely advances the evidence-based evaluation in the PCVE field. And referring to Marzena in her previous statement, evaluation is really to find out what works, how, and why. And this is very crucial in the whole PCV field and the exit work field that I'm active in as well. Mindful of our time, I want to make sure that we have a bit of time for any questions. So thank you, Vasilio, so much for joining me in this session. Let's close the practitioner input and we come back to our Q&A. So what we heard so far in this panel is the different aspects of evaluation package from IRENA. We talked about Marzena presented the repository of risk and protective factors. Kai introduced the training packages and learning products, and we had the practitioner perspectives. Before we open up the floor, we would also like to draw your attention to an upcoming policy recommendations workshop that will take place 12th of July in Riga. We can put a link in the chat so you can read more. This will be something to keep an eye out for anybody who is interested in joining that workshop. But for now, together with Pedro, I think we open up for a bit of Q&A. So we can start with inviting our speakers to whoever wants to share at the first draft. What recommendations regarding the presented products would they like to highlight or focus on for policymakers interested in evaluation or advancing evidence-based evaluation in the PCV field?
Robert, I'm not sure who should answer this question, but I know that we have Lena here, who also is, as I already mentioned, greatly contributed to the whole project and to the development of the evaluation package. And maybe, Lena, would you like to take this question if you're here with us?
I am here. Thank you. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. I work with Irina at the University of Helsinki, and much of the work that Irina presented we have done together. And after all these interactions that we have had with policymakers and practitioners, and getting to know the state of evaluation and the common challenges and possibilities that come with it, I think there are mainly 2 points that I would like to highlight, especially for policymakers. The first one is that evaluation is most successful and useful when it's designed based on maximizing learning. We talk a lot about finding out what works and what doesn't work, and that easily gears towards doing outcome evaluations that are and for attempts to try to prove some kind of impact of the initiative. That is, of course, important, but actually perhaps more important in terms of really developing effective, well-run initiatives is to first maybe start with process evaluations and foreground the needs of the initiative, so that the evaluations are designed to help them to learn from what they have done. This is anyway a relatively new policy field, so we are all figuring out to some extent what to do. So really foreground learning and think less about controlling or proving impact with numbers, especially. I think that is the most important step we need to take at this stage. And the second one is to understand that evaluation takes time and resources. So it is very wise to ask the initiatives to provide an evaluation plan and to ask them to provide it already when they start. And also encourage them to develop a theory of change that really makes it explicitly how they think that the initiative is to work. But in order to actually implement the evaluation plan, this should be taken into account when giving resources for the project. It is not something that can be just done on top of everything else. It may require hiring an external evaluator, and in any case, it takes quite a lot of time from those running the initiative, even if there is an external evaluator. So it's wise to also budget that into when determining the resources for the initiative. And I think this is something that we really need policymakers to participate in solving, because we have seen quite often that the practitioners who are responsible for the initiative would be very interested in having evaluation to support their learning, but they at the same time do not really have means to do that. And that is definitely that kind of missed opportunity out there right now that we could relatively easily already address right now.
Thank you very much for that input from Lena. Please post your questions in the chat. And for now,
Robert, if I can,
yes,
as
please,
we are currently without any questions, but here's a question/challenge also to our colleagues that develop the most core products in our project I just presented, and to Marjena as the leader on this initiative and on this consortium. Congratulating, of course, everyone for the outstanding achievements, and for also considering that evaluation is now one of the cross-cutting thematic points within the strategic orientations of the prevention of radicalization 2024-2025. Evaluation is now mentioned, so it's a critical achievement on the project. But indeed, the project itself, it will end in early the second semester of 2024. So what are the next steps? What are from now? What is there next for Indeed? And this is a challenge/question that I make to the panelists in the previous session, and also to any policymakers or practitioners that have participated in the various events that we have organized, either training or others. Yeah, thanks.
Maybe I can start just to fill in the silence.
Yeah, and I also see that Kai has his hand raised.
Please, Irina, you dive in, and then I'll compliment.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I think that's a very relevant question, but it's also a very complicated question because, well, so far, as I already mentioned, we formed and we initiated this community of those interested in evaluations and those who are gaining more and more expertise in evaluation. So the question is how to continue, and obviously to continue, the most simple answer is that we need additional funding, because we have a lot of ideas on how we can continue, also how we can improve the tool. And also, just a few days ago, I had a chance to talk with somebody from the OEC, and they mentioned that it would be great to have such a tool in the languages other than the European languages. So, for example, in the languages of Central Asia, for example, because the terrorism is the global phenomenon. So it would be really great to find the means and the resources to continue also spreading this knowledge to other countries beyond the EU. So that would be my very quick response to this question.
I think if I was going to follow on from what Irina has said, just a few elements. One, in the Indeed project, there's been the very innovative development of the repository of risk and protective factors, and now working on the creation of a repository of evidence-based initiatives. When we designed the project, this was done before ChatGPT and AI had really come out onto the scene, and it's been an incredible work done by Stefan Kloss and others within the partnership, but really led by Stefan. But imagine if we were to now update these and apply AI tools to them to be able to harvest and extract key learnings and identify key findings from them. But Stefan has also come with a proposal that we're beginning to hear from more colleagues across Europe, which is to develop a repository of evaluations, so that when evaluations are done, at the moment, very often they're seen by very few. And so they aren't really able to feed into learning more broadly in the field. If we were to take the step to have a repository of evaluations so that we could also then take out the knowledge from those, again, you always have to look, is it replicable? What is the validity and the quality of the evaluation, to know the context in which initiatives were done? But it would certainly be a significant step forward. As part of that, he's also spoken about repository of evaluation methodologies and approaches and lessons learned relevant for PCVE. The second is part of what we'll be doing in tomorrow's event, day 2 of the Indeed Policy Forum, with the focus on the community of practice. And this is something that's coming up at different levels. You have the discussion coming from the United Nations Sub-Working Group on Evaluation, and they'll be joining tomorrow with their creation of a global community of practice. But there's also the discussion of creating, as we'll hear from Sophie Ebbeke, also from Germany, about national and local communities of practice. This is important as part of the architecture of evaluation, bringing together practitioners in multi-stakeholder formats at local and national and European levels to really be fostering exchange. And this is what the Knowledge Hub provides a wonderful opportunity for, building on the great experience that there has been from RAN. And I think in so many ways, it's a natural evolution to flow the results and the work from the Indeed project into what will now be taken forward, as Harry was sharing with us, in the work of the Knowledge Hub. The last that I'd want to share is just really innovative work that's being done by Lotte Ralph, a researcher with the Vortex project and previously with Preval, where she's looking at the architecture for evaluation and knowledge management. So in Indeed, we've taken some steps towards developing a fantastic tool that can help in the field, towards developing some knowledge resources like the repository and the training materials. but it's really about building the architecture for evaluation, learning, and knowledge management at local, national, and European levels, putting in place the institutions that can do this and the systems for it, not just relying upon individual agencies, NGOs, or practitioners to take it up. There's a lot of agency we all have as individual NGOs, institutions, practitioners, experts to bring this forward, and indeed has helped to harvest and catalyze that. But at the end of the day, it's also working to advance systems, institutions, and the architecture which helps to put this in place. And that's, again, where policymakers have such a key role to play.
Thank you for that input. We have time for one more input from Vasilios.
Thanks, Robert, again. And I mean, for me, it's really crucial before thinking how we will send and exploit the results of Indeed in other countries. We should find ways, I mean, to ensure that all the deliverables would be available at national level. And for me, for instance, we are planning to have a cascade training in Greece, I mean, in the coming days. We will take advantage of the two trainers, Greek trainers. So we are planning to organize a training providing all this material, I mean, and knowledge to Greek practitioners and not only police officers. This is a kind, you know, of how we can better exploit the results of the project. And secondly, based on the comment by Pedro, evaluation is one of the priority. So also for the European Commission and for the member states the coming years. So also perhaps we need to find ways in the framework of the new EU Knowledge Hub, how we can better exploit the results of Indeed project and also other EU-founded projects. Yeah, this is my comment.
Thank you very much for that, Vasilios. So mindful of everyone's time, we are closing the Q&A session. And Pedro, I leave it back to you.
Yeah, thanks, Vasilios and Robert, especially Robert for excellently moderating this panel and this session, and to all the panelists that took part in this hands-on session on the Indeed Toolkit. We are indeed reaching the end of day one of the Indeed Policy Forum, and a lot of information was shared. We started the day a couple of hours ago addressing why evaluation is crucial for policymakers, such as on understanding the effectiveness of preventive policies and interventions, what works, what does not, why it worked and why it didn't in specific contexts, towards formulating evidence-based policies and strategies. And how the EU Knowledge Hub on the prevention of radicalization will, through a series of activities and services, integrate all actors within the PCV field, from policymakers to practitioners and researchers, in a variety of actions and following a walls of society, multi-sectoral international collaboration, and bottom-up approach, also contribute to achieve a major goal: the improved evidence-based policies and strategies implemented across the EU on the prevention of radicalization. And the way to reach to evidence-based policies is knowing what works towards implementing evidence-based mechanisms that ensures that we, EU member states, public organizations, non-governmental organizations working in PCV, as the practitioners that are here today in this event with us, are on the right path, or that we know what we need to change towards achieving our objectives. And that is where Indeed enters, providing a broad set of resources that were largely explored in our panel. Without repeating myself, but the Indeed evaluation package, comprising a series of tools, the ABAM, Evaluation Evidence Model, the guidebooks, the web-based tool for planning evidence-based evaluations, the repository of studies on risk and protective factors, comprising a database of 250 studies, enabling a centralized resource that helps all PCV professionals to quickly access up-to-date critical information, and the training package and learning products developed within the project, and the training activities and events that are fully tailored to practitioners' needs and addressing the identified gaps. Ending up, as Kai mentioned, to be a part of the EU member states' practice and policy-wide strategies, facilitating this integration. And needless to talk about the practitioners' perspectives. Vasilios mentioned that prior to Indeed evaluation, was not only that well part of the day-to-day job of PCVE actors within this law enforcement department, but concrete aspects, tools, trainings, and availability of the training and the resources in practitioners' languages are being taken into account in Indeed. And Robert also mentioned that something in this direction. Nowadays, evaluation will for sure be a part of a PCV program that a government or a multilateral institution intends to fund. Probably this was not the case in actions oriented in the majority of the member states, not all, of course, 10, 15, or 20 years ago. So happy to say, and of course to witness with all of you, that Indeed is on the right direction, and that the foundation for a thorough, common, and evidence-based evaluation procedures are being laid, and we worked on this for the past 3 years. And as part to close this session, Robert already talked about the policy, the event that will take place in Riga next month, and we also have two other events that we'd like to talk a bit at this moment. Before going to the one in September, I will just give 1 minute, if possible, Kai, to talk about the day 2 of this Indeed Policy Forum. Go ahead, Kai.
Thank you very much, Pedro. So day 2 tomorrow. Firstly, actually, a thank you, a special thanks to you, Pedro, and to Robert for today's day 1 for facilitating and taking us so smoothly through it. Day 2 tomorrow will be a special session of the Indeed Policy Forum. We'll be focusing on communities of practice and creating a community of practice for advancing evidence-based evaluation and evidence-based policy and practice in the field. We'll be joined by Josephine Mwenda from the United Nations, who is part of their global initiative for a community of practice, as well as Sophie Ebeke from Preval, sharing with us national and local models of community of practice, and hopefully also by Eileen van Leuven of the ICCT Monitoring and Evaluation Center of Excellence, looking at models for strengthening capacity for COP. Then we're going to open it up for a conversation with practitioners, those of you joining us, to hear what would you want and what do you need from a community of practice to really make it relevant and useful for you. Following that, we'll have a more in-depth session on the Indeed final event and second International Policy and Practitioners Forum taking place in Warsaw, as you can see on your screen, from September 11th to 13th. We'll be looking at what the event will cover, some of the sessions that we'll be having, and opportunities for agencies and organizations, governments, policymakers, practitioners, evaluators, and experts in the field to contribute. If you have sessions you'd like to propose for the second day, which will be the Indeed Forum, or if you'd like more information and to know how you can contribute and take part, that's what we'll be covering in day 2 of the Indeed Policy Forum tomorrow. Please do join us, and also feel free to share the link with colleagues, partners in the field. We welcome all participants in tomorrow's second day of the forum. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Kai. And indeed, just in 30 seconds, to emphasize for everyone to save the date, take a look at our website, indeedproject.eu, on more information about the final event and the second International Policy and Practitioners Forum, on title Advancing Evidence-Based Policy, Practice and Evaluation in the PCVE, De-radicalization and Crime Prevention Fields, and Shaping the Future. So on my behalf and the behalf of the whole Indeed Consortium, I would like to thank you once again very much for your presence. We hope you enjoyed the presentations and discussions that we had here today, and looking forward to see you all tomorrow. Thank you very much.